Lots of theories about Genshin Impact's world building hint at the concept of time working strangely in Tevat, from time loops to time possibly being meaningless. But regardless of those uncertainties, something that gives us a sense of normalcy about the passage of time is the way Liyue hosts its Lantern Rite without fail every single Chinese New Year in real life. Because of this, everyone knows what to look forward to at the start of every single year, or X.4 patch, and everyone is hyped for the festive atmosphere, the possible debut of new characters from the region, and the chance to meet our favorite Liyue characters again. Well, that is if your favorite Liyue character so happens to also be Hoyoverse's favorite Liyue character. If you're a Baiju stan or something, you're better off just taking 5 pictures of him at Chenyu Vale. That's probably gonna be more screen time than he's ever gonna get in the Lantern Rite storyline. While yes, Lantern Rite is a fun event dedicated to putting Liyue and its characters in the spotlight, it's clear that the attention is not equally distributed to all its playable characters for several reasons, some reasonable and some probably rather quote-unquote unjust. And this screen time inequality might be exacerbated this year since there seems to be some Fontainian visitors to Liyue who could possibly take screen time away from some of your faves. So while this issue is honestly a rather shallow one, I think it's still worth discussing what to expect for this Lantern Rite in terms of character exposure, and to think about ways for Hoyoverse to possibly improve its storytelling to include everyone, even extending beyond the context of Lantern Rite. If you find this kind of content interesting, you might want to consider subscribing to the channel to catch some of my future releases. Now, you may be wondering, this topic seems to hit rather close to home to you. Have you been holding a grudge against Hoyoverse for their treatment of your favorite characters? Well, kinda. On one hand, there have been many instances where I was treated with surprise appearances of my favorites, like when Lisa talked about Mondstadt's economy during Klee's silly bomb blasting event. The bartending event in 2022 was also cute, and many of my favorites also have skins that I got for free. And yet it's undeniable that some of my other favorites have had such lousy dialogue in some events that it's as if they weren't even there. Take for example Yanfei's appearance in the 2023 Lantern Rite, where she had less than a minute of screen time and was dragged by Ganyu away from the conversation, making it so that she hardly got to say anything noteworthy and substantial. That's probably a normal experience for most players who have some popular faves and other neglected ones as well. But honestly, I'm not really that frustrated about Yanfei in particular, considering she's been recently involved in the Onikabuto fighting event, where she helped Ito get a permit for his game and even explored a new hobby in the process. The real reason why I'm so concerned about screen time is because, as a character analyst, I do really think there are some characters whose thoughts and feelings have not been deeply explored, or even if their involvement in previous quests were good, it can be easy to forget what makes their character so great without additional updated information on them. Like, let's say Shenhe. As amazing as she is with her personal development and overcoming her past trauma, it's really difficult to recall that when we don't see her often or don't hear people talk about her often, because again, we don't see her often. This is why events are so important, because they give underexplored characters a chance to shine or show unique parts of themselves through the event quests. These stories can serve as a catalyst to not only revive interest in said character, but also understand and empathize with them more deeply. In the case of the Lantern Rite celebration, this is the only event where we can be almost 100% sure that all Liyue characters will appear no matter the duration. There are so many characters that we don't see all year except for Lantern Rite itself. Characters like Yunjin, Chi-Chi, heck even Yelan, who's insanely popular among fans, plus many other Liyue characters, hadn't really been in other content last year as far as I remember. That's why Lantern Rite is the only chance we get to see them again, yet with how large the Liyue cast is, it's hard to expect a lot for their involvement. Of course, there's a possibility that they'll appear in other silly flagship events throughout the year that involve a cast of random characters that somehow work together, but we can't predict which characters will get lucky this year. In many ways, Liyue is already very lucky to have the yearly Lantern Rite, where all its characters will eventually appear, because aside from Mondstadt, the other regions have not had reruns of festivals that involve every single playable character. The Irodori Festival and the Interdarshan Championships might have been a one-off that won't get repeated, so it's hard to tell the next time your favorite characters from another region will even show up. I think one of the worst cases of this would be with Kujo Sara, who did not even appear in the Inazuma dedicated event last December 2022, where Ayato organized this Test of Courage challenge thingy in Chinju Forest. Luckily, she did get screen time in the TCG event, but only as a side commentator, so nothing new about her character personality got revealed at all. And we can't tell when she'll come on screen again, since we don't know when the next Inazuma festival will be held. However, Liyue's regular Lantern Rite events may also lead to false hopes and subsequent disappointments for fans of pretty much any character who isn't Hu Tao or Xiao. Because while we expect all Liyue characters to be involved in the celebration, we can't ascertain the quality of their involvement at all. Again, it's not so much of a big deal in the grander scheme of things, since you can always play your favorite character anyway and make up fan content about them. But it can be tiring to have no new satisfying crumbs to work with, and there will be much fewer people who will rave about your favorite character along with you if they're not the focus of the event. And the screen time inequality for this year's Lantern Rite might be worse because of the increased involvement of characters from other regions. While we don't know how many of them will be involved in the quest, we already know that at least Charlotte and Furina will be there, who could potentially take away some screen time from some characters who are actually citizens of Liyue. It might seem even more unfair considering Furina was the star of the last event already, and yet she's likely to receive more screen time yet again than some other characters who haven't appeared for a year. The exchange also doesn't seem very equal because while, let's say, someone like Furina traveled to Liyue, I'm not exactly sure when they'll allow someone like Baiju to join another region's event. Some characters are just more likely to travel than others who need more outlandish excuses for them to end up in another nation because they're tied down to the fulfillment of their strict and regimented duties. And those characters are likely to be shortchanged by an international event cast. Nonetheless, I really don't think it's a bad thing for playable characters to come visit Liyue, as international relations in Genshin feel fresher and more exciting, plus they hint at Tevat's continued globalization and cultural exchange. It allows for new interactions to arise, and these new dynamics can unlock new sides to characters we know already. In some cases, this can allow us to piece bits of lore together for characters who have existing friendships with other characters abroad. In Mondstadt's Windbloom Festival, Collei and Amber were able to meet again, Sino got reacquainted with Lisa and had a lovely, insightful conversation where she dropped a huge lore bomb about the nature of the spirit possessing Sino. Then in last year's Lantern Rite, we also witnessed the two oldest Archons from the original 7, who were quite close friends before, meet once again in their new forms. One of my most treasured moments of development for one of my faves, Chongyun, happened during the Mondstadt Liyue Poetry Festival, where he visited Mondstadt and found Diona's childhood Oceanid friend, who seemed to have blessed her with the ability to make any drink taste good, leading Chongyun to believe that maybe his pure yang energy was a gift instead of a curse. That insight of his happened in Mondstadt, showing that exposure to other people in different nations truly serves to broaden our perspectives. Playable characters in Genshin don't benefit from existing in a bubble of their own regions, and the same goes for events. Liyue's Lantern Rite can't go on forever without some sort of innovation in its format, so I think their attempt to include Fontainian characters was their way to make 2024's Lantern Rite feel new, as this is the 4th iteration already. It also makes sense since Chenyu Vale borders Fontaine. I think the fact that this year's Lantern Rite will involve characters outside of Liyue isn't a problem at all in and of itself. I think the potential issue might lie in the fact that there's a limited amount of event quest runtime in total, and that time now has to be shared among even more people, so it might possibly push underrated Liyue characters to the sidelines even more. However, what if the writers were actually able to implement a way to include foreigners in the storyline without compromising the involvement of characters from that region? Of course, we can't expect all characters to gain an equal share of the dialogue in an event because events have a certain storyline to them and it won't make sense for all the characters to contribute to the plot equally. Like if there's gonna be a song and dance number, you'd expect more performing artists to take the lead rather than government officials or doctors. It's also more natural for some characters to command more attention due to their charisma and extroversion, so they get more of the spotlight simply because they interact more with others or because the writers understand that their presence alone makes the event more marketable to players. Yes, these natural sources of screen time inequality may be unavoidable, but I have noticed ways in which the writers have tried to address this problem in the past through particular storytelling strategies. I think the most successful and direct way in which an event was able to make pretty much all characters shine was the inclusion of side anecdotes in the Irodori festival. If you remember, the main storyline involved the 5 Kasen, who were poets that used to perform for the Raiden Shogun, but whose exact identities or biographies were up to interpretation, and Ayato used their characters to inform Kazuha about the downfall of the Kaidehara clan and the culprit behind this. This main storyline also involved the international delegation consisting of Venti, Albedo, and Shinchio. However, aside from that, the event contained a segment called Festival Deeds with bonus anecdotes of Yoimiya playing with Klee, Toma organizing a chore competition basically, where Ito won a chance to avail of this special drink only to be allergic to the soy milk in it, Sayu being commissioned by Sarah to line up for a Shogun figurine, and Sarah being later embarrassed by A taking notice of the figurine, and Goro desperately trying to hide from Yarimiko while buying books for Kokomi. That way, characters who couldn't be involved in the main storyline were able to make appearances for more than 1 minute each, and these little quests were honestly quite hilarious, so they were able to draw our attention and let us learn more about the Inazuma characters without boring us. Aside from this, I would also consider the Vineleze Fest event in Mondstadt to be a rather good case of screen time management. For one, they also allowed characters who weren't in the main storyline to appear in that little mini game where we were running a business and we got to have quite an extensive conversation with each one. Well, at least for me as an Albedo fan, I really appreciated how we got an insight into his philanthropy, his lack of attachment to money and personal belongings, as well as his shift to doing science for the public's benefit by creating a sobriety potion which we accepted from him to sell at our store. But that's not the only thing that this event did well. Even the main storyline was structured in such a way that made it easier to include more characters because it was about Razor making Thousand Wind wine with his friends to connect with his dead parents more, and through Lisa's help, many other characters got to pitch in with ingredients or materials to assist the endeavor. Since this winemaking conscripted many individuals' contribution, it naturally led to them being involved in the story in a substantial way. Because if it wasn't a collection or contribution-based story, you wouldn't need to approach that many people and it would have narrowed down the cast. So it's not just about adding more mini-quests, but also making the main quest have a story which naturally requires everyone's assistance. Another thing which I think Genshin did well when it came to screen time management was adding an epilogue during last year's Lantern Rite. While this shortened the time spent for the main storyline, it allowed 2 sets of characters to be involved in each part. So while it didn't make sense for Zhongli, Xiao, and the Liyue teen friend group to be very much involved in finding the musician Adeptus along with Ganyu, they were still able to have enough screen time because of the banquet that Hu Tao hosted. So dividing the main quest into different sub-stories with different casts can also improve screen time distribution to some degree. With this, I hope that the 2024 Liyue Lantern Rite We'll try to involve one of these techniques to tell a more inclusive storyline that will satisfy as many Liyue character fans as possible, even while allowing characters from other regions to participate. It's not entirely impossible to achieve, but it will need very good writing to do so, and the writers also need to be dedicated to providing more characters with proper screen time in the first place. That's not to say that a character necessarily needs a lot of screen time in order for them to have a memorable appearance. Personally, I really enjoyed Lisa's conversation with Sino in the Windbloom Festival despite her very minimal screen time because her dialogue was insightful. I think what needs to be done is to give slightly unpopular characters even just a tiny bit more screen time and make their dialogue more sincere and reflective rather than shallow and repetitive, since many Liyue characters have potential that writers just need to tap into. Anyway, whatever the case is, some of you might have seen the dialogue count leaks and have prepared yourself for disappointment. I think I have, but I don't remember, so I'm just gonna hope for the best for the Liyue cast. Even if some of them have fewer lines, I hope their appearances will be memorable anyway, and I hope to enjoy this year's Lantern Rite more than last year. So good luck to all of you who are anticipating seeing your faves once again, and I hope you'll be blessed with iconic moments of each of them, especially in the signature festive cutscene. With all that said, who's your favorite Liyue character, and are you pessimistic or optimistic about their involvement in Lantern Rite? What was your favorite event with a cast from several different regions? You can share your thoughts down below, and if you like this short analysis of mine, then do make sure to give this a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to keep up with my future content, and I'll see you again soon.